So I've got this nice well-worn pair of pants that wore through in the knee, which is where they typically do wear through. And you can see it's really got a pretty big hole there. And some people would just say, well, it's time to get a new pair of pants, but I've had a number of pairs that have gone through, so I just took part of leg from another pair and sewed it on here. And there are some, I wouldn't say really tricks to sewing. They're things that maybe you could learn on your own. But one thing that's very useful is to use pins to attach the thing. And now I'm talking about hand sewing here. I don't necessarily have an objection to machine sewing, and I've done a fair amount of it through the years, but I don't have a sewing machine at the moment readily available, so I'm gonna sew these up by hand. And just to be a little punk, I've got my this is a fairly heavy thread that has been waxed. I don't know exactly what it was intended for or why it's waxed, but geez.
She's so skittish.
One of the tricks, I would say, to sewing is not to make your thread too long. And I typically sew a double thread, or double thickness. So I'm going to cut this off the spool at, I guess it's about 2 feet, maybe somewhere between 18 inches and 2 feet. And I keep my sewing things together partly in a basket where I have all kinds of different things related to sewing. But I also use one of these, which is known as a hussif or housewife, and I don't know to what degree that was a joke or whatever, but this was the common name for this type of a thing. It folds up so you can carry it or store it away. This end is stuffed with some wool, and it's like a pin cushion, and it's also where I keep my needles handy. And I usually keep a little bit of the last thread on the end, partly so that I can know which one's a pin and which one's a needle, and it just makes it easier to find the thing. So I take that bit off and discard, and then this particular thread has cut nicely, so it's got a bit of a point to it, And I cannot remember what the old woman tells
What's up?
Tom Sawyer. And she tells him something that he threads the needle wrong in the book. Tom Sawyer, did you ever read that section of Tom Sawyer? Tom Sawyer's disguised as a girl. He goes, I think it's Tom Sawyer.
I haven't heard, my dear.
I'm pretty sure that's not in Huckleberry. It's in one of those two.
I'm gonna have me a strawberry. Fantastic. Hi, Ro-Ro.
Now,
You see something.
to keep from
Very nice, Mark. Excellent. Excellent.
to keep from going through to the back, I put my hand in there. Here's my hand inside the pant. So I'm going to support the pant with my hand. And this is a pretty heavy duty needle. But ouch, but denim is thick. Now some people will knot that end, and you could. I typically don't bother because I'm going to make pretty tight, I'm going to sew into a pretty tight area here, and that typically is going to, that end will hold because I'm not going to pull it, and I'm not going to pull it up really tight and lose it. I'm just going to make a total mess, which sometimes happens, as you can see. This is one of the reasons for really trying to focus on a task, whatever your task is, and not to be distracted, not to try to set it up so that you don't have all kinds of distractions. Okay, so I've got one stitch through there at this point. So the pin is part of the trick, but you got to be careful that you don't get your thread caught on it. Okay, so that's two. The first few, the tension on the thread may not be the best because it's still sort of loose at the end. But then once you're 2 or 3 into it, then it goes more smoothly. And I'm going from outside the patch into my finger that's on the underside, and then pulling out of that again, and then coming up through the patch. So I'm going through just one layer, going down, and coming back up. I'm going through 2 layers of cloth. Now these are work pants, so I'm not placing a lot of emphasis on being really regular or super neat. I really just want to get the patch on there, and I want it to be on there firmly enough that it's not just going to pull right off again or get torn around. So this is not going to be really pretty. I'm pushing the head of the pin down so it's not going to catch on the thread. And actually those first 2 pins I really could remove at this point. Now there is a temptation to have a longer thread because you figure, oh well, I'll be able to go for that much longer before I have to thread it again. The downside of that is that you have to handle this long thread while you're working. So it really is best to keep the thread not terribly long. And while this is still hanging here and I know exactly where the needle is, I'm going to take my spool of thread and get out about the same amount of thread as I had last time. Got my scissors and trim that. Now I keep my scissors, I try to keep them where I can find them each time, and what I do is I keep them in this little cup inside my sewing basket, which is really an egg basket, but I just use it for my sewing stuff. So I keep all that together. Oh, but I'm gonna need the scissors. Okay, so I'm gonna trim that off. The cats are gonna assist me here. Now this particular thread, because it has been waxed and has been on the spool, it's got this kind of wiry quality to it. Cats are enjoying my housewife cord there. So scissors go away, hand goes back in. I've got the needle threaded, and just start up again. I'm going to leave some of that coming out the end. I hadn't really intended to do that, but that's okay. That holds that in place. And now, kitty, you gotta stop chewing on that. Here, chew on this. Give her a bit of this trimming from the pants. Hey, look at that. Look at that. What's that? What's that? What's that? Why don't you go after this? She is completely determined to have my no. Oh, it is scoozy, nasty. That is nasty. What a nasty cat. Ugh. No. Yeah. So then you just keep sewing that up.